Alright, we got the sunlight streaming in. I can tell this thing is not straight. Hey guys, what is up? It is Sabrina here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. If you guys are new here, go ahead and check out my channel because I do a lot of content on Christianity, wifehood, motherhood, and just biblical knowledge in general. Today, I want to talk about a topic that is honestly highly debatable. It seems that people are very opinionated about which Bible translation to use, which one's the best. Today I thought I would talk about Bible translations. Which one should you use? What's the difference? What even is the realm of Bible translations? I am first just going to say I'm not an expert. I am a student at Westminster Theological Seminary and this is my last year in my Master's of Theological Studies program. And one of the very first classes I took was called Principles of Biblical Interpretation, where I learned a lot about this topic. So I have studied it on my own. I have studied it formally in school. However, as always, do your own research, look for yourself, and decide for yourself what you think. I am going to mention, before we get into the video, one book that I highly recommend if you guys really want to dive into this topic. It's called How to Understand and Apply the New Testament by David Andrew Naselli. He has a whole chapter dedicated to translations and he gets really into depth about this. I recommend this book any second I can get. Highly recommend. Some of the things I'm going to mention in this video, I'm going to mention from the book. So I'm giving full credit to him for some of the things I'm going to mention, but most of it is just going to be me from the things that I've learned here and there. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Okay, so where do we even start? Because most of the time when people think about the Bible in the English translation, they think of the KJV because it is one of the most popular translations of the past couple of centuries, at least. It's dominated Christianity. Now it is changing to ESV, NIV, NASB. For the past couple of centuries, it's been KJV, which means King James Version. I'm just going to say the reference or like the abbreviations and y'all can look it up to see for yourself. Most people, when they think about a Bible translation, they always say they want the most accurate, literal, word-for-word translation. Well, I'm here to tell you that nothing like that exists, not in the English language. So if you guys didn't know, the original Bible was written in Hebrew and Koine Greek, I think it's pronounced Koine Greek, and Aramaic. Those were the original Bible. That was the languages they were written in, and that's what God inspired. However, most of us don't speak that today. In fact, English is the global, and I guess you could say dominated language of the world. And so obviously the Bible wasn't written in English. It was a long time before the Bible got to be in English. First of all, a translation is never going to be word for word or literal. And I kind of got the idea of how this works because I was raised in a household where we read the Romanian Bible. I'm Romanian, my parents are Romanian. And then in church, I would read the King James Version. If you guys don't know how languages work, this is a little example right here. If I were to say the house is blue in English, if I were to literally word for word translate that into Romanian, what you would get is something awkward like house that blue. That is kind of awkward, doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can even misunderstand what I'm trying to say. It's impossible to get a literal word for word translation when you are going from one language to another. What they have to do is get the idea across. For example, instead of saying the literal that house is blue, you're gonna take that sentence and you're gonna try to make it into the Romanian version, which is not going to be word for word, the house is blue. The structure of sentences is different according to the language. KJV was not the first English Bible to be translated. I could be wrong on my details, y'all, so if you know, please comment down below, but I'm pretty sure the first English Bible to be published was William Tyndale's Bible in the 1500s, sometime in the 1500s, and then King James I published the King James Version in 1611. Because of the king's rule and influence, it became very popular as a used Bible. Now that we know a little bit of history and a little bit of an understanding about how translations work, I now want to get into 4 qualities that make translation excellent. The first thing that makes a translation good is accuracy. And this goes back to what I was just saying about language sentence structure. If you are trying to do it literally word for word, it's going to come out so inaccurate. For example, and I'm going to take an example out of this book right here, although I already gave you one. They say that if you were to take a word for word translation of the Greek verse, John 3:16, this is what you get. So for loved the God, the world, so that the Son, the unique he gave, in order that everyone the believing in him should not, he might perish, but he might life eternal. The original verse, the one that we know, is, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth him should not perish but have everlasting life." Do you see how confusing it is when you try to do it word for word? So obviously they had to adapt what the original said in Greek to English and make it sensible. So that's what I mean by accurate. A lot of people don't know what they're talking about when they say they want accurate. That's what accurate means. You're trying to get the meaning of what the verse was saying in the original language accurately into our language so we can understand it. The second quality is for it to be clear. You want it to be understandable. I'm going to refer to the book. It says, "An excellent Bible translation is just as clear to modern English readers as the original Greek text was clear to its original readers in the first century." The Bible made sense to them, okay? When it was written in their time, in their era, with the words that they were aware of, everything, it has to make also sense to us. And so I'm not saying at all replace words like a sickle. They use, like, for example, a sickle to cut down wheat. Well, we don't do that anymore. So I'm not saying replace sickle with combine, okay? That's not what I'm saying. For example, in the KJV, which is more form-based, it says by the word of his power. For us, though, we don't speak like that anymore. So in the NIV, it says by his powerful word. That's clear English. It's easy to understand. The third quality is for it to be natural. And this is what I really struggle with the KJV, is because it's not natural. KJV has words like ploweth the field, soweth the seed. Thou hast come down to us. We don't talk like that anymore. At least I don't know anybody who does. It's very unnatural when you talk like that in your everyday life. All the books you read are regular in your natural English, and then you read the Bible and it just makes the Bible seem so far apart. And this is not me hating KJV, it's just me saying I don't think it's practical for where we are today in history because we don't talk like that. That's how they used to talk in the 1600s. A good translation understands that and comes down to our language. For example, what is unnatural language? Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I would consider that unnatural. More natural would be, our Father in heaven, may your name be honored as holy. We don't speak with the word hallowed anymore. And so many of us probably don't know what that means. And over time, maybe you can build an understanding, but I think for young Christians, it can be very confusing. The last quality is for it to be audience appropriate. By this, what it says is the most popular English translations aim to have a vocabulary and style that most English people can easily understand, and that would be appropriate to read in public when the church gathers together. So the four qualities of an excellent translation are it's accurate, clear, natural, and audience appropriate. He goes on to give explicit examples of all of those. So that's why I say just go read this book, because it'll give you everything you need to know. But in case y'all want to watch this video, here it is as well. So that's from the book. Now I'm going to kind of get into just more of what I was taught. Now we're going to talk about form-based versus meaning-based. Form-based attempts to follow the form of the source language. The form meaning the word, the way it was written. And then meaning-based translations make every effort to communicate the meaning of the source language. Now that may not sound like a big difference, but it does make a difference. And I'm going to show you guys the translations that I have and just give you guys examples. So what a form-based translation would be is King James Version. It is a little more awkward to read, comes across as a little more unnatural because of the form base of it, also because it was written centuries ago or translated centuries ago and they had Old English language. And another example of form-based would be ESV. So this is personally my favorite one, but this is the ESV one. And this also comes across as a little bit awkward at times. I do like this because it doesn't have words like thee, thou, soweth, ploweth. Examples of meaning-based translations would be NIV and NLT. Once again, to just get more into what form-based means, I'll read some of the things. Form-based also is called formal equivalence, and some of the strengths of this approach is that it better enables English readers to see word patterns because this approach tries to translate the same Greek words with the same English words as much as possible. It enables readers to trace the argument better in the epistles for two reasons. One, it more consistently renders logical connectives with English words, such as therefore, for, and but. And number two, it more consistently translates principles and other subordinate words as syntactically subordinate to the controlling verb rather than starting a new sentence. It is less interpretive, so it may be less likely to convey a wrong meaning. And it is very helpful for students who only know a little bit of Greek because form-based translations more closely follow the Greek word order and syntax. That is why I really like the ESV, because it drops some of the distracting these and thous from KJV, but it's still form-based. And now to get into meaning-based, which they call functional equivalence, some of the strengths from this approach is when it's well done, it can be more accurate because it focuses on reproducing the meaning. It tends to be more clear because sometimes maintaining the Greek form in English can introduce ambiguity in English that is not present in Greek, and it uses natural English, not merely understandable English. Its philosophy is not to reproduce the form whenever possible because that sometimes results in Biblish rather than English. And it is appropriate for people without a high literary ability, such as children, poorly educated people, and people who speak English as a second language. And then there's also the mediating approach, which is a little bit of, in between both. They both have their strengths, and this is why this video isn't about which one's better and which one's worse. I truly believe that each translation has its purpose and function, and it can be used effectively when used as it should be. I prefer the ESV over the King James Version. Like I said, because it is a lot more of a natural read, but also because the manuscripts used to write the ESV, which originated from the RSV, were the Masoretic texts of Hebrew, whereas the King James Version had the Textus Reptus manuscript used. After more research and study, they found that the Textus Reptus lacked textual criticism, whereas the Masoretic text of Hebrew, they found multiple copies of it, and it was supposed to be basically more reliable and accurate. If I'm saying something wrong, call me out, but this is what I think I remember from studying it. Now, centuries later, we have access to much more manuscripts have been discovered, and that way they could have put it together a little bit more accurately. Now getting into the different translations and what I personally use. I grew up with the Romanian Bible and the King James Version Bible. I no longer use the King James Version Bible only because I don't think it's fully as accurate in some places as the ESV is based on the manuscript they use, and also the language is very awkward and hard to read and honestly very distracting to me. I feel like when I was trying to understand this, I was just getting caught up in all the awkward way it was sentenced and all the awkward words we no longer use today that I wasn't even getting the message because I was just focused on that. So I truly don't think it's very profitable for me. I know some people, my parents were raised on the King James as well as Romanian, they kind of were raised on both. And so for them, it works and it's great and they understand the Bible, but I just personally don't think it's practical. I like the ESV. This is my main study Bible, and honestly the one I recommend to everybody. If you're going to get a Bible, get this one, because like I said, it is form-based, so it still works hard to preserve the Greek syntax and the word phrases and word structures, but it is kind of dropping some of that awkwardness from the KJV. Let's get into NIV. So NIV is considered mediating. It's not quite form-based, but it's not quite meaning-based. I really enjoy it. I have this one, the NIV Study Bible, and I find it to be so easy to read and easy to understand. Like, knowing the background of KJV and ESV, I love this one. And that's why I say I like to read other translations with the backdrop of ESV, because I trust ESV to be the most, I don't want to say accurate, it strives to stay closer to the Greek wording and structures. It's easy to understand, easy to read, and it's very poetical, so I really like it. And then on the more meaning-based side is the NLT, which was actually gifted to me years ago, so I didn't even know about it until it was given to me. But this one is definitely more meaning-based, and I will say that it is, I wouldn't say it's paraphrased, but I mean, some people would consider it paraphrased. It is a lot more of a story. Like, when I read the Old Testament in this, I feel like I'm reading a story, and it's like a book. So it's very, very readable, very interesting, and beautiful. And I like some of the words that they use to exchange for different words. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So I would not read NLT or NIV on their own. I would 100% recommend that you read ESV, and like I said, use it as your backdrop, use it as your foundation Bible. But in addition to ESV, I have gleaned so much from NIV and NLT, and so that's why I say I think it's like we have access to so many translations. Why limit yourself to one? Why not use all of them? And I'm not saying use the NIV or NLT as your main source, but definitely use it to your advantage, because you can genuinely learn so much from it and understand verses and stories and narratives in such a different way. And so getting a well-rounded understanding of the Bible is something I'm all about, and that is why I like to use multiple translations. In this book, they have a kind of a range, I don't know if y'all can see, but from the more foreign-based, and they show you the different translations, to the mediating, to the more meaning-based, to the free, which I wouldn't recommend the free. It's like the Message Bible. I wouldn't even call that the Bible. That's a little bit of a background and a little bit of an oversight into the translation world. And hopefully if you enter this video saying, I'm a diehard NASB or I'm a diehard King James Version, you can't change my mind, that's the written word of God and everything else is false. If that's you, I really hope this video was there to help you show you that the King James Version is a translation from the original God-breathed word of God. And everything else that came after that was a translation. It was humans piecing together manuscripts over centuries with multiple scholars and academics working on this to produce all of the translations we have today. And I think that there's no danger in reading different translations as long as you understand how they are structured and who translated them and how you can best effectively use them in conjunction with one another and not in isolation of one another. That being said, let me know your thoughts down below. I really do want to hear what everyone has to say. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you learned something. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one.